Hello everyone. This video is going to be an introduction to a little project that's going to be kind of happening on the sidelines, and that is the construction of a little N-scale model railroad. I've had model railroads since I was a kid, mostly HO scale, you know, the typical 4x8 sheets of plywood, that kind of a deal. And I switched over to N-scale as an adult, and I've been stocking up some kits and locomotives and things like that. I'll show you some of the stuff that I have. Anyways, in our house, we have a spare closet, and the closet is going to be utilized for this small layout which we're going to build. And the dimensions of the closet are 23.5 inches by 66 inches. So you don't have a lot of space there. N-scale shines in an area like that where you just don't have a lot of room. Anyways, this is a hollow core door, which is going to serve as the base of our layout. I've already actually cut that to the dimensions. And then I have some foam here, which we'll utilize to make our elevations as necessary. And I've kind of drawn out a very simple layout. So on the main layout, it's just going to be like an oval with a spur. And then I'm going to make a secondary elevation and just do like a little point-to-point layout, just so I could have two trains running at the same time. This is going to be straight DC. All of the locomotives that I have, that I've been collecting, they're all DC. In the future, what I may end up doing is making a shelf layout over this layout, like a switching layout. And that I'll probably take my first foray into DCC. I don't have any of that equipment yet, but it's something, of course, as you grow in the hobby, that's a natural, step forward. So I'll show you some of the locomotives and stuff that I have. And, this thing is just going to be, this video is going to be where I periodically provide some updates on this project. It's definitely not going to be a step-by-step thing. I don't have the experience to provide much advice for somebody looking to build a layout, but it would just be something for my son and I to enjoy. Let me take you over to the room where I'm actually going to have the layout. So this closet here has these nice bifold doors. When we're not using the train, we could just close the doors. There's one shelf in there, and the closet, as I mentioned, the distance between the back wall and this front wall is 24 inches, and the side-to-side distance is 66 inches. So there's not a lot of room for any type of large radiuses on the layout, which is where N-scale really, really shines in that area. Up here where this wire shelf is, my plan is I'll install some track lighting underneath here to illuminate the layout, and this I'll cover with some kind of a fascia or something like that to make that look a little nicer. There's no outlet in here, so I'll have to run an outlet in there. But then when we're done with using the layout, just leave the door closed, and that'll also help to keep dust off the layout. So I think that's going to work out really nice. Cabinet down here, I got a bunch of miscellaneous cars, locomotives, things like that. Some Broadway Limited, some Catos. I like these old Lifelike Heritage steam locomotives. Those were nice locomotives for the time. This thing's kind of a neat piece made by Concor. It's called the Pioneer Zephyr. It's lighted on the inside, kind of a neat piece. Here's some of the kits. I've been building these things up forever, waiting to build a little layout. This is a Coon Gap sawmill by Master Creations. Those kits in N-scale are hard to find. They really made some unique products. There's the actual kit down there. I got a couple of their Minerva caskets sitting down here. There's a bunch of other ones here. So I'm really looking forward to getting this little layout going and get some of these kits built. This is another cabinet with a bunch of modeling stuff in there. There's a couple more kits there. I got a Cato locomotive sitting in here too. Here's some various weathering supplies, some hydrocal cobblestones. Got an airbrush in here, rock molds, streets. In this drawer there's a bunch of laser cut signs that I need to put together. These are mostly like the bar mills style. Those little details really make the difference, on a train layout. People, cars, There's sidewalks, fences, you know. This is mostly landscaping type supplies, trees and grass, that kind of stuff. Down here we got some modular type buildings, and then a bunch of these little DPM type kits. Those are pretty nice. So I cut this door in half and I reinforced it with those large hinges and those corner brackets there, and those could easily be removed. If I ever need to move this thing, I'll be able to tap those pins out and take the whole thing apart. So it's being designed with portability in mind, just in case. And when I lay the track, I'll put a joint right there that will come apart real easily should the need arise. So here you can see the main layout, and as you can tell, the layout is obviously hugging the very edges of the door, and that's by design because I want to use a larger radius as possible, so I can get 22 inches across here, or an 11-inch radius if you want to call it that. And that's to, you know, provide the biggest radius I can given the space I have. And I am going to use a number 6 turnout here instead of a number 4 to transition into that spur. So trying to use, you know, larger radiuses and less track as opposed to doing a spaghetti plot with a bunch of tight radiuses in that. On the upper level, which I'll install now so you can see that, that'll be the little point-to-point layout. Second level of the layout is going to be a point-to-point, which obviously I'm still roughing that in. And I left a bunch of access panels in here. These will be easily accessible. If the train derails back there, I'll be able to reach my hand in here, be able to reach it in under here. I'll have access here. There's an access point underneath this tunnel. This thing just lifts off. You can see there's another access point there, like that. That's by design. And so the train's going to start over here at one point, right? It's going to come along here. It's going to go underneath this tunnel. Then it's going to come out here. And when it gets to this point, it's actually going to be supported on some viaducts. And then it's going to go back on here, come back around and start there. And it'll just keep reversing back and forth in that fashion. And the reason why I decided to put it on like some pier supports here is because visually it won't feel so cramped. If I had the foam extending all the way out on this radius here, okay, it would be right next to this one and it would feel more congested. But by having the track floating on those abutments, it's going to visually, it won't feel so congested in there. And now this is the 9 3/4 radius. You know, obviously I had to make that radius a little bit smaller, but I could still get a good amount of locomotives to run on that, and that'll just be running point to point. I have a little circuit board where that thing will just be going back and forth, so that'll allow me to run 2 trains at the same time. You know, I could have running down here and one going up there, so that should work out just fine. Now I got to get this roughed in and carry on. Okay, here you can see the back of it. We got that trimmed out with some balsa wood, and that's all going to get painted. Of course, the back and these ends are going to be completely invisible in the closet. Those will be right up against the walls, so you'll never see that, but we still want it to look nice. Got this thing roughed in, and I got it sprayed up with some spray paint just because I was tired of looking at the purple. You can see here I got this tunnel going on over here. Got some cobblestone in that area there. Still working on this upper level. And then over on this side, of course, you got your access panel here, your access panel under here. This will move to be another access panel. This will move. And then here's another tunnel there I've been working on. I got the back side of it painted up as well. That'll be hidden. But next step is going to be to start putting some track down. We'll start with the lower level first, and then we'll do the upper level. I got the main oval completed. I got it formed and all the joints are soldered together. I really took my time and made sure each joint was nice and smooth. I ran numerous steam locomotives over it, which are a little bit more prone to derailing, and I wanted to do that type of a torture test on it to make sure that the joints were up to snuff. I was able to run the Athearn Big Boy over these curves, and that's, you know, one of the biggest steam locomotives there ever was. And so if that will run, then most every other thing will run. So now what I'm going to do is I slid the particle board underneath there. I'm going to spray and weather up that main track on top of the plywood. And then once it's weathered up, then I'll go ahead and mount it on the main layout. So we got the main oval mounted onto the layout, and I spent hours on that making sure that our track work is flawless. And I was running all the different steam locomotives around there, making sure we didn't have any derailments. And I checked every single tie of that track, and it's really nice and smooth running. I did have to make a small modification in order to accommodate some of the large locomotives like the Athearn Big Boy. Because I have the radius of the track as big as possible given the space constraints, the ass end of the Big Boy just barely clears that tunnel, but it does clear, so I had to cut off the very edge of the tunnel to allow that to clear. But it does clear, and I had to do the same thing over on this side. So, you know, when you're working in a space-constrained area, you have to make sacrifices. And I'd rather sacrifice the edge of the tunnel as opposed to having a smaller radius on the track. So the next step is going to be to work on the spur area, getting that track installed, and then we'll start installing the track on the upper level. I did solder on my feeder wires, and we got nice, good connections on there. The train I'm running right now is the Concord, the Burlington Zephyr. Beautiful little train. Lights up real nice on the inside when you're running it. Once we get the upper level track done and the spur on the lower level, at that point I'll probably move the whole thing into the closet, and then I can just spend my time, you know, installing structures as time permits. But I'm just trying to get the foundation of the layout done out here in the garage, and then we'll get it moved inside. Continuing to make good progress on the layout. One modification that I made was I decided to remove one of the turnouts here and just go for one long spur as opposed to two shorter ones. Obviously with another turnout in here, you reduce the effective length of each one of the spurs, and with some of my long locomotives I thought it would be more useful to have one long one in there, so you could see where I took that other one out. And up here on the upper level I got our circuit board wired in. I have it temporarily being powered with a 9-volt battery, but I just ordered a 9-volt transformer, so that will be plugged into the wall here shortly. And so this, on the point-to-point layout, see the locomotive comes out. That's a Kato center cab switcher. I believe it was released by Concord. So the locomotive stops there. If you can imagine, there'd be a couple cars behind it. Then it pauses for a few seconds. Goes around the layout, through the tunnel, at the other end of the tunnel, comes to a stop, and then reverses itself. At this end here is going to be an engine roundhouse, actually the John Allen version. So both of those tracks will terminate in the roundhouse or in the engine house. If I move this access panel, here you can see the circuit board, which it's really like a double pole, double throw switch. And right now you see that 9-volt battery in there. As soon as I get the transformer, that will be replaced and this unit will be plugged into the wall. So the next step is going to be ballasting all this track, and after that point we'll get it moved into the closet. Now we got a little ballast on the track. We got a little grass down there. That's just temporary. I'll eventually put scenery over most of that, but it's better than looking at a spray painted surface. And you can see here we got two trains running at the same time. Temporarily they're hooked up to one power supply, so when they both run at the same time they slow down a little bit. But once I get them set up in the closet where it's going to be permanently, each one will have its own transformer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at some of the structures that I have. I'm going to look at the footprints of those structures and start making a template for a layout of the buildings where everything's going to go, and kind of get a general idea. And then I'm going to hook up the electricity in the room where I'm going to keep this, in that closet, set some lights up in there and move it in there. And then, you know, I could take my time adding the buildings, you know, just doing that gradually. I'll probably put a little fascia on the front of that so it's dressed up a little bit. But we're getting there, making good progress. Down underneath the layout here, put up a couple shelves, and we have the two controllers for each level of the layout. The top controller is a Control Master 20, and the bottom one was made by Chicago Electric or something. I forgot the manufacturer of it. Anyways, each one of these controllers has a walk-around throttle, which is nice. With the point-to-point layout, at this time I'm not really getting much use out of that walk-around throttle, but it gives me the option in the future if I decide to change that. So these are nice out of the way here. Down there where I have everything plugged in, I have a remote control for that outlet. So whenever I want to run the layout, everything is plugged into the one outlet there. I can just click the remote control off and on, and everything will come to life at one time. In this open area underneath here, I have this cabinet, and in that cabinet it's like a little mobile workstation for building some of the structures that are going to be on there, so that will fit perfectly underneath the layout. This fascia on top here is only being held in temporarily with some zip ties, because I may end up moving that track lighting up a little bit higher on the other side of that shelf. I'm going to run the layout for a while and just see how I feel about it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed following along on the construction of this small little layout. There's a lot more work to be done on it. Going to get the structures going and get it decorated and looking real nice. I think this would be a nice little place for my son and I just to come and watch some trains run. You know, I'm not really into the operations and all that kind of stuff. I just want to watch the trains go around, and this layout is perfectly suitable for that. It'll be nice for us to be able to build some buildings together as my son gets a little bit older. So I'm looking forward to that. Once we get some details added to the layout, we'll bring you guys a video, you know, and show you some periodic updates of the layout. Anyways, I hope you folks enjoyed following along. Take care. Bye-bye.